Hello, BookTube. I have a mail haul for you on this bright, chilly day in Boston, and because I have not set any books aside in the course of the week using foresight and adult judgment, this is in fact the last mail haul of the week. I'm not going to set any of these aside. We're just going to go through these. We had a massive amount of new books yesterday. Surely you can get it. You can stand a day off tomorrow. We have a small stack of books. It ends in a box and then a very much bigger box. So that's a nice conclusion. Let's see what we get to before then. Let's see what this first one is. Feels kind of heavy. Oh, great. Okay, fantastic. All right, this is a finished copy of something that this must come out really soon. I sent this to one of you with the hope of a review. I gather that I am not going to get that review, so I'm glad to have a finished copy so that I can do it myself. Okay, I don't need any of that. But when I showed you the advanced copy of this, it generated quite a bit of interest, and it's certainly interesting to me. This comes out in early April, and it's by Lindsay Chervinsky, and it's called The Cabinet: George Washington and the Creation of an American Institution. Keep in mind that Washington had to create the first cabinet. The first, all the precedences started there. On November 26th, 1791, George Washington convened his department secretaries, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, Henry Knox, and Edmund Randolph. Guess which one of those is my favorite? For the first cabinet meeting. But why did he wait 2.5 years into his presidency to call his cabinet? Because the U.S. Constitution did not create or provide for such a body. Washington was on his own. Faced with diplomatic crises, domestic insurrections, and constitutional challenges, and finding congressional help lacking, Washington decided he needed a group of advisors he could turn to. He modeled his new cabinet on the councils of war he had led as a commander of the Continental Army. In the early days, the cabinet served at the president's pleasure. Washington tinkered with its structure throughout his administration, at times calling regular meetings, at other times preferring written advice and individual discussions. And in this book, the author reveals the far-reaching consequences of Washington's choice. The tensions in the cabinet between Hamilton and Jefferson heightened partisanship and contributed to the development of the first party system. Washington was not elected in a party system, but and wanted to avoid it, and so did everybody else. In the beginning of the American government, they all wanted to avoid party politics, but it was inevitable, and it was next. Right after him, it was next. And as Washington faced an increasingly recalcitrant Congress, he came to treat the cabinet as a private advisory body to summon as needed, greatly expanding the role of the president and the executive branch. And I have not read this. I dipped a tiny toe into it, enough to know that it was serious. But I have not. I have not done any more than that, and I need to, because this is right around the corner. I'm curious to know if this will stick to its remit, to the remit in the title and subtitle, and just be about Washington's cabinet, in which case that would be fascinating, or whether or not the author is going to broaden that to look at presidential cabinets just in general. The last time I read a book on that subject was a long time ago, and I'm not saying that would be a bad thing, but I'd rather that the author sticks to Washington, to his own thoughts and deeds. Lord knows that is copiously documented, so we shall see. But I need to get to it right away. It's an interesting subject either way. Let's see here. Next one is... it's fighting me. I have a feeling these things are all going to fight me. Let's just tear into it. See, this is what I get for not having any editing abilities, so that I can't just cut away from these things. I had to tear that apart to get in it. Somebody must have, somebody triple taped this thing. Boy, oh boy. Okay. Well, I appreciate the caution, but whoever did it, I wish I could have a brief word with them, because padded UPS envelopes will survive the thermonuclear apocalypse. The zombies couldn't rip them open, so there's no reason to pad a book that way. None at all. Oh, great. Okay, all right. This is, oh my. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. Well, the padding of the book didn't help any, because it came to me, look at that. It came to me just ripped to pieces. I've never seen a dust jacket this badly damaged. And it's not just wrinkled and torn, it's also frayed from its laminate binding. I don't think that was done by impact. Wow, okay. All right. Well, it's a double anyway, so that's good. This is The Other Bennet Sister, by Janice Hadlow. She's a longtime BBC producer, but this is her first novel. And it's Jane Austen pastiche fiction. It's about Mary Bennet. It's about the only truly despisable Bennet sister in Pride and Prejudice. There's the headstrong younger girls who are foolish, but maybe not evil. Not anything that our narrator, our busybody, intrusive narrator, who is not impartial, that narrator never quite vilifies, but in the way that narrator vilifies Mary Bennet. And of course, the two oldest sisters are paragons. We've already seen this. We saw it just a bit ago. This book reimagines Mary Bennet, the overlooked, plain, and studious middle child in one of literature's most famous families. Stuck in the shadow of her four beautiful and popular sisters, more likely to hole up in a library than dance at a ball, Mary seems, in the original novel, destined for spinsterhood and solitary life. But Hadlow's Mary gradually realizes that she wants something more than this dismal fate. And I read this book, and it's very good. It makes some interesting decisions. One of the decisions that Janice Hadlow had to face originally, she could have avoided completely, which is if she had decided to set this entire book after Pride and Prejudice. Then she could avoid completely the problem that if you set a Pride and Prejudice pastiche novel during the action of Pride and Prejudice, this book extends beyond that action. But it also runs Mary's narrative straight through the stories that we all know from that book. And if you choose to do that, you are stuck with what's on the paper. You can invent all kinds of things that are not in Pride and Prejudice, as long as they don't violate the action of Pride and Prejudice. You can invent all kinds of things, all kinds of meetings that aren't in the novel. But you're stuck with what is in the novel. And Mary Bennet has some horrifyingly tone-deaf scenes in the midst of family upheaval and crisis, with her bloodlessly quoting from excerpts from books that she's read, that go a long way towards making her the least likable of all of the Bennet girls. And the problem that Janice Hadlow has to face, and she does decide to do that, you're halfway in this book, you're still in Pride and Prejudice, the events of Pride and Prejudice. Since she chooses to do that, I was curious to see how that would work. Exactly the same way as I was with Longbourn by Joe Baker, who blurbed this book. Because that also overlaps with the story of Pride and Prejudice. And as a result, and it deals with the one of the head servants at Longbourn, Mrs. Hill. So anytime Hill is in the story in Pride and Prejudice, you've got to have her in that exact same story saying those exact same things in your pastiche novel. Otherwise, it would be reviled. A pastiche novel has to be that sort of thing, that kind of faithful. And I thought it was really well done here. Really, really well done. And a very touching ending. About halfway through the book, I found myself wondering what I always find myself wondering when I'm reading pastiche fiction of any kind, but also, Pride and Prejudice, pastiche fiction in general, in specific. I was about halfway through the book, I'm thinking, why on earth am I still reading about these people? I can imagine their inner lives as much as you can. I can imagine what happens to Mrs. Bennet after Lizzie Bennet leaves home and becomes Mistress of Pemberley. I can imagine all that as well as you can. We all can. Why on earth am I reading this stuff? But I got caught up in it anyway. And it's also really well done. Janice Hadlow has a really good prose style. So that it's great to get a second copy of this, but look at that. Oh my. Actually, I should probably ask if one of you wants it and doesn't mind it in this condition. Is there a Jane Austen superfan out there that would want a finished copy of this, even though it looks like this? Or am I gonna do what you already know? You can already predict I'm gonna do it, which is to say you can have this damaged copy, and then when push comes to shove, send you a good copy and keep the damaged one for myself. You just know I'm gonna do that. You people, you have me wrapped around your little finger. Of course, there's also the hope that I might get blurbed on the paperback down the line, which would end up being the version of the book that I would want anyway. But anyway, let's move on. Oh no. Oh God, it's him again. Okay, all right. All right, this is also a double. This is what we saw this already, so I'm not going to go through my same rant about it. I won't read the whole thing because we just saw it the other day, yesterday, I think. This is by Robert Stedall, and this is Elizabeth I's Secret Lover, The Royal Affair with Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. New from Pegasus Books. This comes out in early July, and in it the author, apparently, I haven't read it, of course, it's way too far in the future for me to read yet, but apparently in it the author flat out says that Elizabeth and Dudley were lovers. Not Elizabethan court lovers where he bows low and he reads her passionate poetry and he flirts with her, but actual romping in bed lovers. It just flat out says it, just flat out concludes that was true. And the other half of the book sounds like it's going to be involved in seriously pumping up Robert Dudley's street cred. We shall see. I don't actually need this double of it, but I'm curious to know come July what kind of coverage it gets. That's going to be fun. I don't know yet whether or not I will review it for the Christian Science Monitor, but I'll review it for Open Letters, whether or not I do. In fact, that is a standard reminder that I don't often enough make on this channel, which is that if you're interested in reviewing one of the books that you see in these endless mail hauls and new arrival videos, if you're interested in writing a review, I am an editor at an online literary journal called Open Letters Review that would be happy to have you try out. I would be happy to help you. We don't pay anything except the book. You can have the advanced copy and the finished copy, and knowing me, you can also have any other kind of book you want. But there's something to be said for sharing space with it. We have a pretty strong masthead, and it gets you. We have a pretty strong masthead, and we are respected. So it gets you some publishing credits that you can work towards other publishing credits, right? Because your work has to be seen by an editor at Open Letters and approved by an editor. And any new editor that you send it to at your local newspaper or at a national newspaper or magazine is going to know that this prose has already pleased an editor, and they are an editor. It's going to ease their job. I'm not harping. I'm just saying it's a nice, fun way to start reviewing books for a public, for an audience. If you want to do that, I would be happy to help you. And I happen to have an extra copy of Elizabeth I's Secret Lover that you could start with. All right, so let's see what this next one is. It's one of these packages. I don't know how they survive. They're just crammed with flaking asbestos. You have to open them like okay, all right, there we go. I did that without any spillage. What have we got here? Oh, no. Oh, wow, okay. This is from Oxford University Press. This comes out in June, and it is another book in a series that we have seen of books attacking American organized religion. Very interesting stuff. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. It's called The End of Empathy, if you can make that out. Why white Protestants stopped loving their neighbors. I don't know why I'm showing you this. That little thing up in the corner is what it's going to look like. Let's see here. Seemingly every day, a new poll finds white evangelicals, by far the largest subset of American Protestants, espousing views that would appear difficult to reconcile with the Golden Rule. These findings were pretty well established by the time of the 2016 election. Still, the news that most evangelicals cast their ballots for Donald Trump caught many commentators off guard. In part, this was because what was known of Trump's personal life was sharply at odds with evangelical teachings. Yeah, to put it mildly. Yeah, fornicating with a pornography star while your wife is recovering from the birth of your child in the hospital is kind of at odds with evangelical values, I would hope. But it was also because, in contrast to previous Republican nominees, Trump made no effort to square his conservative policy positions with the Christian ethics of love and compassion, meaning he's an a-hole. And he's also an illiterate a-hole, as you can tell when people ask him about the Bible. He says, I love the Bible. I absolutely love it. It's my favorite book, apart from my own. That's the part that evangelicals blank out. But when asked, he says he ranks the Bible as the best book ever written, except for The Art of the Deal. And they just don't hear that. They just somehow manage to turn off their ears and just don't hear it. They just don't hear that part. When that part is not just for Southern evangelicals, but for all Protestants. In fact, even for us woolly old Catholics, that is blank, black letter blasphemy. Say that the art of the deal that you paid some schmuck to ghostwrite for you because you couldn't write your own name is a better book than the Bible is blasphemy. Try telling that to the evangelicals who come into the Oval Office and prey on Donald Trump. Anyway, this book presents a nuanced portrait of the changing values of evangelical voters over the course of the last century. Using extensive archival research and public opinion data, the author explains why Protestant religious involvement once promoted concern for the less fortunate and why that is no longer the case. I would argue that the transformation happened much later than the turn of the 20th century. I would argue that the thing that got the break that got this to happen, the break that caused some branches of the American evangelical community to go full-on psychotic and hypocritical, was Roe versus Wade. I think that was the thing that did it, not any prohibition or anything like that at the beginning of the 20th century, but Roe v. Wade. And I think that also explains why they're willing to tolerate an utterly amoral and atheist troglodyte like Donald Trump, because he can get judges appointed, Supreme Court judges appointed. He's filling the Court of Appeals with judges picked by the Liberty Foundation and a whole bunch of other conservative think tanks with only one aim in mind, and that is to eradicate Roe versus Wade. So that might be the reason that explains everything. I'll be curious to know. This advanced copy won't have an index, so I won't be able to just look at Roe v. Wade and see how much of a shadow it casts over the whole book. But I'm going to read it anyway. I'm going to have the whole thing from front to back, word by word. Tracing the Protestant Church from the 19th century through the 1930s, 1960s, and beyond, this book argues that the collapse of mainline religious authority in the late 1960s exacerbated our nation's ideological divisions and paved the way for the rise of a new strand of Protestantism. Led by conservative leaders who discouraged attempts by the government to promote a more equitable distribution of wealth and political authority, this type of evangelical congregation offered middle-class white voters the assurance of salvation while simultaneously liberating them from the biblical injunction to care for the downtrodden. Sounds pretty thoughtful. The sell sheet is not written by the author typically, but they usually do approve it. So, okay, well, I am on board. Who is this author? John Compton is Associate Professor of Political Science at Chapman University and the author of The Evangelical Origins of the Living Constitution. Yeah, well, the 1960s. Wasn't that the 1960s the very prototypical start of the so-called prosperity gospel? Wasn't it around then that mega churches started to pop up all over the country, and the prosperity gospel started to be preached from every pulpit in those mega churches, that money is something God wants you to have? I don't know. I'll have to check the timing. Or rather, I will wait on the book. Of course, I'm not going to read a June book now. But in fact, today has been so windy and chilly that I don't believe June is ever going to come. But when it does, I will get to it. But we've seen a lot of books like this. A lot of books on current American Protestantism, current fundamentalism, and a lot of the books are taking the tack that it has sold out. The large elements of that, especially the politically active elements of that, have sold out for political influence. Absolutely fascinating. Don't know where it's all coming from. I guess it's a fascinating subject on its own. I agree with the authors of all of these books. The authors of all of these books point out that the thing that really highlights the change in those branches, those political branches of fundamentalism, is their embrace of Donald Trump, who is obviously atheist. He's obviously brainless. He's obviously amoral. He gropes and talks about groping his daughter. He's been married 3 times. He's conducted affairs throughout it all. He has studiously avoided, in the last 4 years, denying that he is still conducting affairs on his current wife, and so on and so forth, down the line, right down the line. Everything that these churches would, the pastors of these churches would condemn with fire and brimstone if it were a member of their congregation. But when the same behavior is exhibited by this guy from this realtor swindler from New York, they're suddenly okay with it. I find it fascinating. But anyway, now we move on to the boxes. And ordinarily, this first box would have been a cause for joy, but the second box is so ostentatiously bigger. This was going to feel like a kind of a disappointment. So let's see what this is. carefully sealed. Lots and lots of this wire reinforced tape. Once again, it's another case where it really is a convenience not to have a sense of touch. It's a convenience when you're ripping open packages not to have a sense of touch. It's also a convenience in a fight. If you ever think about it, it's been my experience that one of the main things that holds people back when they're in a fight is fear of pain. Fear of getting clocked in the eye or in the chin or something like that, and for it hurting really bad. And I don't have that worry, but I also don't have that worry when I don't fight anymore. When it comes to tearing open packages. So what is this? Oh my, have we seen this already? Oh my, I don't know if we have or not. Oh. Okay, this is, I can't remember if we've seen this already. This is by Christina Spohr, and it's called Post-Wall, Post-Square. How Bush, Gorbachev, Kohl, and Deng shaped the world after 1989. Big, thick thing. Also damaged. So maybe it's my porch and not anything else. This comes out, the date on it is March the 24th, but I'm sure that this is from Yale. I'm sure that this is not embargoed. So if your bookstore got it this week, they might put it out. But one way or another, this is going to be, do I want to know? $40 hardcover. Let's see what this is. This offers a bold new interpretation of the revolutions of 1989, showing how a new world order was forged without major conflict. Something that George H.W. Bush noticed at the time. He didn't quite know what to make of it, but he noticed at the time, and he said to his wife and also to his diary that the changes that he was seeing in his term as president, it was just the random luck of the draw. It's when the roulette wheel stopped, was in his term as president. He noted privately and in his diary that the kinds of changes that he was seeing usually were accompanied by warfare, and in this case not. Wow. Based on extensive archival research, Christina Spohr... Okay. Christina Spohr is not based on extensive archival research. Christina Spohr is based on Mr. and Mrs. Spohr. But I know what you mean. Christina Spohr attributes this in large measure to determined diplomacy by a handful of international leaders who engaged in tough but cooperative negotiation to reinvent the institutions of the Cold War. She offers a major reappraisal of George H.W. Bush and an innovative reassessment of Mikhail Gorbachev and Helmut Kohl. I was wondering what Helmut Kohl is doing in there. He doesn't get, in my opinion, anywhere near the spotlight that he deserves. What a fascinating figure. What I wouldn't give for a 1,000-page biography of Helmut Kohl. But no. No. As well as Margaret Thatcher. Uh-oh. I didn't warn Martine. I hope she wasn't in the room. And Francois Mitterrand. Yeah, and not only them. Not only those figures, but also Lech Walesa, Pope John Paul II. It was a time of giants. It's going to be fascinating to read this. And thanks to its publication date, I can read it tonight. But, the author argues, Europe's transformation must also be understood in global context. The book contrasts events in Berlin and Moscow with the brutal suppression of the pro-democracy movement in Beijing and reveals how Deng Xiaoping pushed through China's very different communist reinvention. Here is an authoritative yet highly readable exploration of the crucial hinge years of 1989 to 1992 and their consequences for today's world. What was that song? What was that song that was forever on repeat on MTV? You're all going to know it. I'm showing my 28 years. Right here, right now, as the world wakes up from history. What was that song? I'm going to have to find it on YouTube. It's exactly this. It captures a moment, a feeling that the world was changing maybe for the better. Most of it for the better. What was that song? Right here, right now. I was watching the world wake up from history. Oh, that's right on the tip of my tongue. Well, anyway, the author is a Helmut Schmidt Distinguished Professor at the Henry Kissinger Center for Global Affairs at Johns Hopkins University. And she's the author of a bunch of other books, including a biography of Helmut Schmidt. Okay. All right, great. She's an active public historian and has written for BBC History Magazine, BBC World Histories Magazine, The New Statesman, The Guardian, and the Wall Street Journal Europe. Great. And this is post-wall, post-square. So the Berlin Wall and Tiananmen Square. Fascinating. Oh, man. Fascinating. I was right in the thick of it. Oh, I wasn't. I wasn't right in the thick of it. I was right on the periphery of it. It doesn't sound as good though. I was right on the periphery of it because I was writing editorials. To beat the band, I was writing editorials. They wrote themselves. It was easy money to do. So this is going to be fascinating. Oh, that goes right to the top of the list. Except for maybe the contents of this next box, because it's huge. It's gigantic. It's like 10 times the size of the first one. And it's as heavy as all get out. I hope it's not a puppy. I've already got a puppy. Let's see. Once again, we will just rip it open because I don't have to worry about hurting myself. I don't have to worry about... there we go. See that? One of the many things that deadened nerve endings are good for. So let's see. Oh. Okay. All right. This is from one of you. A massive gift from one of you. It's a box full of books. So let me show you. Let me show you all of these. The first one is Brian Lamb. This is Book Notes. His famous show where he talks to authors. This is America's Finest Authors on Reading, Writing, and the Power of Ideas. This is basically a rendition of the best scripts from Book Notes, the ones that really took off. He had a wonderful... do we have a picture? Yeah, there's Brian Lamb. One there. He had a wonderful way of talking to authors, and I've read the book. The book came out when I wasn't reviewing books, right? 1997, yes. So the world still had to wait 10 years to get reviews from yours truly again. But I read it, and I don't have a copy, and I want one. Of course I want one. So let's see what's... Oh. Oh, you are so good to me. This person who sent this, I cannot thank you enough. We've already seen this on this channel, I think. But it was a gift, another gift. A hardcover version of this came to me from Jason Harrigan at Byways and Bookland, who's currently on a bit of a hiatus from BookTube. He had this book and in hardcover on a shelf behind him, and that's dangerous because we all get to look at each other's shelves in every video. And I said, "Me wanty," and he amazed me by sending it to me from Ireland. King's ransom to send it that far. And this is the same book, only in paperback. This is the Complete Chronicles of Conan by Robert E. Howard. Look at that. Look at that. This is the surprisingly sturdy trade paperback of this, which has, let's see, they've got the off-color map of Conan's world. There should be more than one map, I would assume. Maybe it's buried in here somewhere. And then you have the table of contents. This is the Centenary edition, edited with an afterword by Stephen Jones, with illustrations by Les Edwards. And the table of contents, this is in memory of Carl Edward Wagner and Elsbreg de Camp. What a great dedication. And this is, okay, so it starts with the Hyborian Age, which is an overview, was kind of expository overview of Conan's age, and then Cimmeria, which is a poem, and then the Phoenix on the Sword, which was the story, the initial Conan story. But then we have Scarlet Citadel, Tower of the Elephant, the Black Colossus. Oh man, Rogues in the House. All right, well, can I find an illustration? There are spot illustrations at the beginning of every chapter, but there are also, yeah, there we go, classic Conan illustration. All right, well, okay, then what else have we got here? Okay, wonderful. I've actually had this, and when I had it in this room. This will go back in this room because it is great. It's a masterpiece from I want to say the Dial Press. I'm not seeing it on here, but anyway, I had this, and I think in my very first library tour, like 3 years ago, it showed up, and one of you said, "Oh my God, that looks so good. Can I have it?" And I, of course, sent it. I have to make a rule. Not a rule, but I have to make a practice of not sending books from this room. The rest of the place, fine, yes, but this room is, here is where books are supposed to be free from the worry that they will ever be prized out of my hands and sent somewhere else. And this was one of those, and now I have another copy, and it's perfect. It's a perfect edition. This is Letters of the Century. Big, fat, fantastic anthology of American letters that is just great. It's edited by Lisa Grunwald and Stephen Adler, and they do a perfect job of mixing funny and serious, long and short, just wonky and also general. It's just fantastic. It's an anthology to lose yourself in. What are you doing? What are you doing? Do you want to see your fans? Oh, Frida's very happy for. In the package that with all these books was also a doggy treat. She's going to be very happy about that. I tell you, you people really know how to treat us both. You really do. So what else have we got in here? We're not done with this box. The box is not done yet. Let's see here. I hope you enjoy these. I had to include something for the little girl. I tell you. All right, so this next one is edited by Anthony Brandt, and this is the travel writing of Thomas Jefferson. This is from National Geographic, and I don't believe I've ever read this book. This was from 2006, National Geographic. 2006 was right when I was getting back into book reviewing, right when we were starting up. I was reviewing books for the Columbia Journalism School online, and also we were gearing up to start Open Letters Monthly. So I would not have seen a book like this. Probably it would not have come in bulk to my bookstore. And I certainly wouldn't have been able to request a copy of my own. So this is going to be a new reading experience, which is something right there. Now, baby, she is fanatically interested in this thing, but I don't know what this is. Am I allowed to? The thing I worry about is the stick. Is the stick edible as well? Treat your best friend to a one-of-a-kind premium dog treat created with canine health in mind. They're bursting with top-quality natural flavors that your dog loves and thrives on. I don't know if I'm, well, Bean, let's just treat, I don't know why I'm overwearing. The standard rule with this dog is Frida will figure it out. If it's not edible, she won't eat it. I don't have to worry. It's not a basset hound. So let's, I can't tell. This might be rawhide. You might be supposed to eat this. See? Ooh. Do you want to take that off and examine it? You do. Okay. All right, so what else have we got here? Okay, this is another fantastic. This is another James Michener. I put out a call recently for old mass market James Micheners that have the oval in the middle of the cover, and I've been getting them. I got the Bridget Andau, which is it's a third string James Michener. It's not one that anybody thinks of when they think of his big doorstop novels. And this second book that I got another perfect condition mass market James Michener, and it also is a not one of those big doorstops. Those I'm not getting, but these I am. This is Legacy. Major Norman Starr of the National Security Council is about to appear before a congressional committee to publicly account for his covert actions. In a tense weekend of reflection and thought, Starr remembers his ancestors, all American but not always right. Hoping to learn something of himself from their triumphs and even their tragedies, from a famer of the Constitution to a slave owner, from a Supreme Court justice to a courageous suffragist, they all recall a strong heritage that Starr must somehow reconcile with his own actions and beliefs. A much more contemporary novel, if I remember correctly, not at all the thing that would be his bread and butter, but just a normal novel. I seem to remember liking his normal novels just as much. This was from 1987. Oh boy. Okay, so the Michener Connections is slowly growing. Then what do we have? Oh, bless you. Okay, this is the another thing that I've been building. Slowly but surely, I've been building a collection of Lord Peter Wimsey mysteries by Dorothy Sayers with the Marie Michal covers, these stylized 1920s style covers. And slowly but surely, I've been finding them. I am not even being picky about the shape that they're in the mass markets because you never see them anymore. And here is a trade paperback of the collected short stories, just called Lord Peter, in perfect condition. How wonderful. How absolutely wonderful. And then what's the... Oh, okay, the last thing in here is a winner. This is Sandra Heath. This is an old-style Regency romance. This is My Lady Domino. Look at that stylized, that old-style cover. Miss Adele Russell knew it was sheer folly to attend the Duke and Duchess of Bellingham's grand masquerade. A year ago, she would have been an honored guest before the disgrace and death of her father. Now she was a penniless shopgirl, scorned by society and mocked by the memory of her broken engagement to the elegant and handsome Lord David Latimer. But when by chance Adele found an invitation to the masquerade, the temptation was too great. What danger could there be in going masked to this dazzling affair? Adele soon found out. First, in the arms of a stranger as mysterious as he was overwhelmingly attractive, and then face to face with the same David Latimer who had broken her heart once and still had the power to do it again. Because, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you, he was the masked stranger. Oh, man. Oh, fantastic. All right, so this was also a call that I put out long before I put out a call for Michener. I put out a call for these old-style Signet Regency romances. The one that they look just like this. They're all the same length. If you go to your Annie's Book Swap or your corner used bookstore and you see these things moldering on the shelf for $1 a piece or 25 cents a piece, make an arm, scoop them all into a basket without even looking at them, pay for them, leave, box them up, and post them to me. I will sort out whether or not any of them are doubles, and I will gladly reimburse you, either with the money for the books and postage, or with a ton of books directed to you. I want all of these. I want all the Signet Regency romances that exist. I love them dearly. I read them all the time. I want all of these, and I want all of these, and I want all of these. My wants are endless, aren't they? All right, well, talk about a way to end a mail haul. Good Lord. That is just staggeringly generous. Just incredible. Plus, a treat for the bean. So... all right, well, that was the last mail haul of the week, and it ended on the highest note of the week, the highest note possible. So I'm gonna go glom all over these books. The new books are completely forgotten. I will get back to them. I won't neglect them forever. But first, I'm gonna glom all over these. So I'm gonna wrap this up. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.